The corridors of the alien ship were never meant for battle. They were clean, smooth passages designed for the calm movement of scientists and guards, but now they echoed with the sounds of combat. Energy weapons fired. Aliens shouted in their strange languages. And at the center of the chaos was Jake Morrison, moving like a shadow through enemy territory. He led his group of freed prisoners forward. Sketh moved ahead, using his natural speed to scout around corners. Lyra's sharp senses detected guards before they could set up ambushes. Prism interfaced with every computer panel they passed, opening doors, disabling security systems, and creating confusion throughout the ship. But Jake knew they were running out of time. They had maybe 40 fighters, and most of them were weak from months of captivity. The ship held over 300 crew members. Eventually, numbers would win. They needed to reach the armory. They needed real weapons, and they needed them now. "Prism!" Jake called out as they crouched behind a corner, energy blast scorching the wall above their heads. "Can you show me the ship's layout again?" The crystal being pulsed with light, and suddenly a holographic map appeared in Jake's vision. The translation system built into the ship worked both ways. He could see every corridor, every room, every deck. The armory was close now, just one level up and 50 meters forward. But it was heavily defended. Jake studied the map, his military mind working through the problem. Direct assault would cost too many lives. They needed a different approach. Then he saw it. A maintenance tunnel that ran parallel to the armory. It was narrow, probably designed for the ship's automated repair systems. But it would work. "Change of plans," Jake announced. "Sketh, take half our fighters and hit the main entrance to the armory. Make a lot of noise. Make them think that's our main attack. Lyra, you're with me. We're going through the maintenance tunnel. Prism, keep the doors open and the security systems confused." The group split up. Jake could hear Sketh's team engaging the guards at the armory entrance. Energy weapons lit up the corridor. The guards were focused on that direction, exactly as Jake wanted. He led his smaller team into the maintenance tunnel. It was tight, barely wide enough for him to squeeze through. Some of the aliens had to crawl, but they moved quickly, quietly. This was the kind of operation Jake had trained for his entire life. Stealth, precision, hitting the enemy where they didn't expect it. They emerged inside the armory through an access panel. 3 guards stood near the entrance, all facing the wrong direction. They were focused on Sketh's attack from the front. They never saw Jake coming. He took down the first guard with a silent strike. The second turned, but Lyra was faster, her claws finding vulnerable spots. The third managed to raise his weapon, but Prism somehow overloaded it, causing it to spark and die. Jake looked around the armory and felt his heart race. Weapons from dozens of worlds lined the walls. Some looked like rifles. Some looked like strange tools. Others defied description. But in the back corner, Jake saw something that made him smile. His own equipment, his M4 carbine, his pistol, his tactical vest, his combat knife. The aliens had kept them, probably as examples of primitive Earth technology. Jake grabbed his gear and strapped it on. For the first time since his capture, he felt whole. He felt ready. "Everyone, grab what you can carry," Jake ordered. "Take anything that looks like a weapon. We need to arm the others." The prisoners moved through the armory selecting weapons. Some chose familiar devices from their own worlds. Others took what looked effective. Jake made sure they had enough to arm everyone in their group. He opened the main armory door, letting Sketh and the others inside. The guards outside had fallen back, confused by the attack from 2 directions. Jake's group now controlled the armory. They had weapons. They had a defensible position, but they still needed a way off the ship. "Prism, where's the hangar bay?" Jake asked, the crystal being pulsed and showed him the map. The hangar was on the lowest level, 5 decks down. It held the small ships the aliens used to collect specimens from planets. Some of those ships could travel between worlds. That was their escape route. But getting there would be difficult. The aliens would know their plan by now. Every corridor between the armory and the hangar would be defended. Jake needed to think of something clever. "Can you cause a ship-wide emergency?" Jake asked Prism. "Something that would force the crew to focus on survival instead of us?" Prism pulsed thoughtfully, its crystalline body shifting colors. Then it interfaced with a wall panel. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Not the intruder alarms they had been hearing. These were different, urgent, terrifying to the crew. "What did you do?" Lyra asked. I told the ship systems that the main power core is overheating, Prism explained. The crew will believe the ship might explode. They will try to fix it, Jake grinned. That's perfect. Skeeth, get everyone together. We're moving to the hangar bay now while they're distracted. Stay together. Watch each other. We're almost out of here. The group moved through the ship in a tight formation. They encountered guards, but most were running toward engineering, trying to fix the fake emergency. The few who stood and fought were quickly overwhelmed by Jake's now well-armed group. They reached the hangar bay after a tense 20-minute march. The huge space held dozens of small ships, each one capable of faster-than-light travel. Jake had never seen anything like it. Ships that could cross the stars, and they just needed to steal one. But the hangar wasn't empty. A large group of guards had formed a defensive line. Behind them stood a tall alien with elaborate markings on its gray skin. Jake recognized it from the security footage Prism had shown him. This was Vexlar, the commander of the ship. "Human," Vexlar called out, his voice amplified by the translation system. "You have caused enough damage. Surrender now. We will return you to your world unharmed." Jake stepped forward, his M4 raised. "You kidnapped me. You put me in a cage. You were going to experiment on me like I was an animal, and you expect me to believe you'll just let me go? You do not understand the situation," Vexlar said. "You have started something that cannot be stopped. When your world learns of us, we will return, not with collection ships, but with war fleets. You cannot win?" "Maybe," Jake said, "but you're not going to be around to see it." He gave the signal. His group opened fire. The guards returned fire. The hangar bay became a war zone. Energy blasts flew in both directions. Some of Jake's people fell. Some of the guards fell. But Jake's group had better tactics, better coordination, and most importantly, they had nothing to lose. Slowly, they pushed forward. The guards fell back toward the hangar entrance. Jake's group reached the ships. Prism quickly interfaced with the nearest one, a sleek craft that looked fast. "This one can travel far," Prism said. "It has enough power to reach your world." "Then that's our ride," Jake said. "Everyone start boarding. Move quickly." The prisoners piled into the ship. Some chose to take other ships, preferring to return to their own worlds. Jake understood. They had been captive for so long. They just wanted to go home. But a group of about 20 chose to stay with Jake. Sketh, Lyra, Prism, others who had formed bonds during the escape. They had become a crew, a unit. They had fought together, and they wanted to finish this together. Jake stood at the ship's entrance, covering the others as they boarded. His M4 barked in controlled bursts, keeping the remaining guards at bay. He was buying time, seconds and minutes, for people he had known for less than a week. "Jake, we must go now," Sketh shouted from inside the ship. Jake fired one last burst and sprinted for the ship. Energy blast scorched the deck behind him. He dove through the entrance just as Prism sealed it shut. The ship's engines powered up with a deep hum. Through the viewports, Jake could see the hangar bay doors beginning to close. They had maybe 30 seconds before they were trapped. The ship lifted off, its alien controls responding to Prism's commands. They accelerated toward the closing doors. 20 seconds. The gap was getting smaller. 15 seconds. Energy blasts from the guards bounced off the ship's shields. 10 seconds. Jake could see space beyond the doors. Freedom, 5 seconds. They weren't going to make it. Then Prism did something that made the ship's engines scream. They shot forward with incredible speed, passing through the closing doors with meters to spare. The other stolen ships followed. They burst into space, leaving the alien prison ship behind. Jake looked back at the massive vessel through the viewport. It hung in space like a dark moon, its lights glowing against the stars. He had been inside that ship for less than a week, but it had felt like forever. Now he was free. Vexlar watched the ship's escape from the command deck. He felt something he had never felt before. Fear. Real, deep fear. The human had done exactly what the archive had warned about. It had escaped. It had led a rebellion. It had stolen ships, and now it was heading back to its world. Vexlar knew what would happen next. The human would tell its people about the Krell. It would warn them. And then Earth would prepare for war. The archive had been clear about species with warriors called Reaper. Once they knew they could be hunted, they became the hunters. He had started something terrible, and all he could do now was send a warning to his people. But he feared it was already too late. Jake Morrison had seen many dangerous places in his life. He had been to deserts where the sun could kill a man in hours. He had walked through jungles where every plant and animal wanted him dead. He had kicked down doors in cities where enemies waited with guns. But nothing prepared him for what happened that night over the Pacific Ocean. He was sitting in the helicopter with his team. They were coming back from a training mission. The night was clear and calm. Stars filled the sky above them. Danny Collins sat across from him, checking his rifle. Next to Danny was Pete Harris, their communications expert. The pilot, a man named Greg Stone, hummed quietly as he flew them home. Then the light came. It was brighter than anything Jake had ever seen. It came from above, cutting through the darkness like a knife. The helicopter shook. The engines made a terrible grinding sound. Greg shouted something, but his words were lost in the noise. Jake felt his body lift from his seat. The safety belt dug into his chest, then snapped like it was made of paper. He was floating. No, not floating. Being pulled. Upward. Through the open door of the helicopter. He reached out, trying to grab something, anything. His fingers brushed Danny's hand, but couldn't hold on. The last thing he heard was Danny screaming his name. Then everything went white. When Jake woke up, his head hurt. His body hurt. Everything hurt. He opened his eyes slowly. The room around him was strange. The walls looked like metal, but they glowed with a soft blue light. The floor was smooth and cold under his hands. He pushed himself up and looked around. He was in a cage. Not a cage made of bars, but a cage made of some kind of clear wall. He could see through it into a long hallway. There were other cages along the walls. Inside them were creatures that made his blood run cold. One looked like a giant lizard standing on two legs. Another had too many arms and eyes that glowed red in the darkness. A third was covered in fur and had a face like a wolf, but wrong somehow. All of them looked tired, defeated, hopeless. Jake's training kicked in. He checked his body for injuries. Nothing broken, no blood. His uniform was still on, but his weapons were gone. His radio was gone. Even his knife was gone. He was alone, unarmed, and trapped in a place that shouldn't exist. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Jake pressed himself against the back wall of his cage. 3 figures walked toward him. They were tall, maybe 7 feet. Their skin was smooth and gray, like stone. Their arms and legs were too long, too thin, but it was their eyes that scared him most. They were huge and completely black. When they looked at him, Jake felt like he was being studied by something that didn't see him as human. He was just an object, a thing. One of the creatures touched something on its wrist. Suddenly, Jake could understand the sounds it made. The words came into his mind clearly, as if someone was speaking English directly into his brain. "Another one from the blue planet," the creature said. Its voice was flat and cold. "Nothing special, just a normal animal that walks on 2 legs. We will start testing it tomorrow." Jake's fear turned to anger. He stood up straight and walked to the clear wall of his cage. "Where am I?" he demanded. "What do you want with me?" The creatures stopped. They turned to look at him. One of them moved closer, studying him like he was a bug under glass. "You are on the ship called Krell 9. You have been collected. We will decide if your kind is useful for work, for study, or for disposal. Your questions mean nothing." The creature started to turn away. Jake knew he had to do something. He had to make them see him as more than just an animal in a cage. His mind raced. What did he have that might mean something to them? Then it came to him. "I'm a United States Navy SEAL," Jake said loudly. "My government will look for me. They will find me." All 3 creatures stopped. They turned back to him. For the first time, Jake saw something in their expressions. Interest, curiosity. He couldn't tell. "You say you are a warrior?" one of them asked. "Yes, a trained soldier. One of the best my planet has, and my call sign is Reaper." The word seemed to hang in the air. The creatures looked at each other. One of them touched its wrist device and spoke in a language Jake couldn't understand. They all looked at their devices. Their body language changed. They seemed worried now, uncertain. Without another word, they left. Their footsteps faded down the hallway, leaving Jake alone with the other prisoners. The lizard creature in the cage across from him made a sound. Through the translation system, Jake heard its words. That was brave, or foolish. They do not like it when we speak to them. What is this place? Jake asked. Why are we here? We are specimens, collected from different worlds. They study us, test us. Sometimes they sell us. Sometimes they just dispose of us when they are done. I have been here for 6 of your months. Others have been here longer. Jake felt sick. These creatures, these aliens, were slavers. They traveled between worlds, stealing people, treating intelligent beings like animals, and they had made the mistake of taking a Navy SEAL. What's your name? Jake asked the lizard creature. I am Sketh. I'm Jake. Tell me, Sketh, how many prisoners are on this ship? Maybe 30, maybe 40, from many different worlds. Why do you ask? Jake looked around at the cages. He looked at the defeated faces of beings from across the galaxy. Then he smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just realized he wasn't as trapped as his captors thought. Because I'm not going to be here for 6 months, Jake said. I'm not going to be their specimen, and neither are you. We're getting out of here. Sketh made a sound that might have been a laugh. Impossible. The guards are armed. The ship is huge. We are weak from captivity. There is no way out. There's always a way out, Jake said. You just have to find it. And that's what I do. That's what being a Reaper means. Over the next hours, Jake watched everything. He counted the seconds between guard patrols. He studied the walls of his cage, looking for weaknesses. He memorized the layout of what he could see. Most importantly, he started talking to the other prisoners. The wolf creature was named Lyra. She had been a hunter on her world before being taken. The creature covered in crystal was harder to communicate with, but Jake learned it could interact with the ship's technology in ways the guards didn't know about. Each prisoner had skills. Each had knowledge. Separately, they were helpless. Together, they might have a chance. Jake began teaching them. Simple things at first. Hand signals, ways to communicate without speaking, how to conserve their strength, how to watch the guards for patterns and weaknesses. The prisoners were suspicious at first. They had given up hope long ago. But Jake's confidence was infectious. His determination gave them something they had lost. Purpose. 3 days after Jake arrived, the creatures came back to his cage. The one who had spoken before stood at the clear wall, studying him with those huge black eyes. We have searched our records, it said. Your title, Reaper, appears in our archives. It appears in the histories of 17 dead civilizations. They all made the same mistake. They captured warriors with death names. They tried to use them. Those civilizations no longer exist. Jake stood up and walked to the wall. He looked the creature in its alien eyes. Then maybe you should let me go. The creature was silent for a long moment. Perhaps. But the decision is not mine. You will be moved to a higher security area while the council decides what to do with you. You should hope they choose wisely. As the creature walked away, Jake knew his time had run out. Once they moved him, he would lose contact with the other prisoners. He would lose his chance. It was now or never. He caught Sketh's eye across the hallway. Then Lyra's. He gave them the signal they had practiced. 1 finger raised, then 2, then 3. Tomorrow they would make their move. Tomorrow the prisoners of Krell 9 would show their captors what happened when you caged a Reaper. Commander Vexlar had been collecting specimens for 20 years. He had visited hundreds of planets. He had cataloged thousands of species. Earth was just another blue world with simple creatures. Nothing special, nothing dangerous, just another routine collection mission. But when the translation system flagged the word Reaper, everything changed. Vexlar sat in his quarters, staring at his data screen. The archive was showing him things he had never seen before. Warnings, advisories, historical records that made his skin crawl. The archive was the collected knowledge of his people. spanning 4,000 years and 1,000 conquered worlds. It was never wrong. The screen showed a simple message in red text. Warning. Designation matches historical reference from 17 extinct civilizations. Translation variants include Harvester of Souls, Endbringer, Silent Stalker. Advisory level, critical. Exercise extreme caution with species exhibiting warrior castes using death designations. Vexlar had never seen a critical advisory before. He accessed the historical files, reading with growing dread. The Threx Empire had encountered humans 300 years ago. No, not humans. A different species. But they had warriors with similar names. Death names. The Threx had captured some of these warriors and tried to make them fight in arenas for entertainment. Within one day, the warriors had killed their captors. They stole ships and returned to their home world. The Threx thought this was just a minor incident. They sent a military fleet to punish the planet and take more specimens. The planet responded with total war. Every member of the species fought. They had no advanced technology, but they fought with such fury, such determination, that the Threx fleet was destroyed. The Threx sent more ships. The species captured those ships and learned how to use them. Within 10 years, the Threx Empire was extinct. The species with the death names had hunted them across the stars until nothing remained. The Morgathi had a similar story. So did the Velcross. So did 14 other civilizations. The pattern was always the same. Capture warriors with death names. Try to use them. Face absolute destruction. Vexlar felt fear for the first time in his long career. He had captured a creature called Reaper, a death name, and that creature was sitting in a cage just 3 levels below him, planning who knows what. He called up the biological scans they had taken of the human. The results were confusing. The creature's body was unremarkable. It wasn't particularly strong compared to other species. It wasn't fast or tough. Its lifespan was short. By every physical measure, it was average or below average. But the neural scans told a different story. The human's brain was active in ways Vexlar had never seen. Even in captivity, even in a cage, the creature was thinking, planning, analyzing. The stress hormones in its blood were high, but controlled. This wasn't a panicked animal. This was a predator evaluating its cage. Vexlar watched the security recordings from the past 3 days. The human had been busy. It had made contact with other prisoners. It was teaching them something. Hand gestures, signals the prisoners were organizing, and at the center of it all was the human called Reaper. Vexlar made his decision. The human needed to be moved to maximum security immediately. Better yet, maybe they should just return it to its planet. The archive warnings were clear. Some species were too dangerous to collect. The price of keeping them was too high. He sent the order to the guards. Move the human now. But even as he sent the message, he felt it was too late. The archive had been trying to warn them. His people had been collecting specimens for thousands of years. They had become arrogant. They thought they were the masters of the galaxy. But the archive remembered the truth. There were species out there that didn't submit. Species that fought back. Species with warriors called Reaper. In the prison block, Jake watched the guards approaching. There were 4 of them this time, all armed. They moved cautiously like they were afraid of him. Good. Fear made people make mistakes. The clear wall of his cage began to shimmer. It was deactivating. This was his chance. His only chance. Jake took a deep breath and prepared himself. He had spent 3 days watching these guards. He knew how they moved. He knew where they kept their weapons. He knew their timing. The wall disappeared. The first guard stepped forward, holding some kind of restraint device. Jake moved. His instructors had taught him that speed and surprise could overcome almost any advantage. The guard was bigger than him, stronger than him, but Jake knew where to hit. He struck at the side of the guard's neck, hoping it was vulnerable. The guard went down hard. The second guard raised its weapon. Jake was already moving, using the first guard's body as a shield. He grabbed the weapon, twisted it away, and struck the second guard in what he hoped was its face. The creature fell backward. The third guard managed to trigger an alarm. A loud wailing sound filled the corridor. But Jake was committed now. There was no going back. He disarmed the third guard with a move he had practiced thousands of times. The fourth guard ran. Suddenly, all the cages in the block began to open. Their clear walls shimmered and vanished. Jake looked around in confusion. Then he saw the crystal creature, Prism, with one of its appendages pressed against a wall panel. It had hacked the system. Prisoners poured into the corridor. Sketh, Lyra, dozens of others from different worlds. They looked at Jake, waiting for direction. And Jake realized something important. He was no longer just trying to escape. He was leading a prison break. He had started a rebellion. "Listen to me," Jake shouted. The translation system carried his words to all of them. "We need weapons. We need a way off this ship. And we need to move fast. Sketh, take whoever can fight and secure the area. Lyra, you're fast. Scout ahead. Find us a route to the armory. Prism, stay with me. You're our tech expert." The prisoners moved. Some were weak from captivity, but they all had the same look in their eyes. Hope. For the first time in months or years, they had hope. And they had a leader who seemed to know what he was doing. Jake grabbed the weapons from the guards he had taken down. They were strange devices, nothing like the guns he was used to. But a weapon was a weapon. He figured out which end pointed forward and how to make them fire. It would have to be enough. More guards were coming. Jake could hear their footsteps echoing through the metal corridors. He formed the prisoners into a defensive line. "Stay together. Watch each other's backs. We move as a unit." The guards rounded the corner and stopped in shock. They had expected to see prisoners in cages. Instead, they saw an organized group armed and ready to fight. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Jake gave the order, "Fire." The corridor exploded with energy blasts and the sounds of combat. The guards had better weapons and better armor. But they weren't prepared for organized resistance. Jake's group had surprise and desperation on their side. Most importantly, they had nothing to lose. The guards fell back. Jake's group advanced. They took more weapons from fallen guards. They freed more prisoners from other blocks. What had started as a small escape attempt was becoming a full uprising. Vexlar watched the security feeds with horror. The human had done the impossible. In 3 days, it had turned a collection of broken prisoners from different worlds into an army. They were moving through the ship with purpose and coordination. His guards, trained for containment and specimen handling, were not soldiers. They were falling back on every front. "Seal the command deck," Vexlar ordered. "Activate all security drones. Send a distress signal to the nearest fleet." His second officer looked at him with wide eyes. "Commander, the nearest fleet is 3 days away. What do we do until then?" "We survive," Vexlar said grimly. "And we hope the archive was wrong about these creatures." But deep down, he knew the archive was never wrong. He had made the same mistake as 17 civilizations before him. He had captured a warrior with a death name, and now that warrior was loose on his ship, leading a rebellion and showing exactly why the archive had warned them. Jake led his group through the maintenance corridors. Prism had accessed the ship's layout and was guiding them. The armory was 3 levels up near the command center. It was defended, but they had no choice. Without proper weapons, they couldn't hold the ship. Without holding the ship, they couldn't escape. "How are you doing this?" Lyra asked as they climbed through a maintenance shaft. "How do you know how to fight like this?" "Training," Jake said simply. "My people have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've gotten pretty good at it." "Your people sound terrifying," Jake smiled. "You have no idea. And soon these aliens are going to find out exactly how terrifying we can be." They reached the armory level. Guards were waiting, but they were nervous. Jake could see it in their body language. They were afraid. Good. He had learned something important over the past few days. These aliens were used to being in control. They collected specimens from primitive worlds. They had never faced real resistance. They didn't know how to fight a war, but Jake did. And he was about to teach them a lesson they would never forget. The stolen ship flew through space faster than Jake could understand. Stars stretched into lines of light as they traveled at speeds that defied everything he knew about physics. Prism controlled the ship from a crystal interface, its body glowing with different colors as it communicated with the alien technology. Jake sat in what he thought might be the captain's chair, trying to process everything that had happened. 1 week ago, he had been a Navy SEAL on a routine training mission. Now he was traveling through space in a stolen alien ship with a crew of creatures from different worlds. His life had become something out of a science fiction movie. "How long until we reach Earth?" Jake asked. Prism's colors shifted to blue and green. "At current speed, approximately 20 of your days. But we have a problem. This ship was designed for short trips between nearby worlds. It needs fuel. There is a Krell outpost on the 3rd moon of the system ahead. We must stop there. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Going to a Krell outpost sounded like walking back into the enemy's hands. But they had no choice. Running out of fuel in the middle of space would kill them just as surely as being captured again. Tell me about this outpost, Jake said. How many crew? What kind of defenses? It is a small facility, Prism explained. Perhaps 20 crew members. Mostly automated systems for refueling and repairs. Light defenses. The Krell do not expect attacks this far inside their territory. Jake thought about it. 20 crew members. His group had 20 fighters. Better odds than the prison ship had been. But his people were tired. They were wounded. Some were still weak from their time in captivity. They needed rest, medical attention, and food. But they also needed fuel. Sketh, Lyra, come here, Jake called. The lizard and the cat-like alien joined him. Over the past days, they had become his closest allies. Sketh was strong and brave. Lyra was fast and smart. Both of them trusted Jake's leadership. We need to hit this outpost, Jake explained. But we can't just charge in. We need a plan. Sketh, your people are warriors, right? How would you approach this? Sketh's tongue flicked out, tasting the air. My people would attack with overwhelming force. Make the enemy fear us. Lyra, what about your people? We hunt, Lyra said simply. We move silently. We strike from the shadows. The prey never knows we are there until it is too late. Jake nodded. We'll combine both approaches. Sketh, you'll take a team and create noise at their communications tower. Make them think that's the main attack. Lyra, you'll lead a stealth team through the main entrance while they're distracted. I'll take a third team and go for the command center. Prism will help us from here, disrupting their systems. They spent the next day preparing. Jake taught his crew basic military tactics, hand signals, formation movements, how to clear rooms, how to watch each other's backs. Some learned quickly, others struggled. But all of them were motivated. They had escaped one prison. They weren't going back to another. The ship approached the moon under minimal power. It was a gray dead rock covered in craters, but beneath the surface, sensors detected the outpost, a complex of tunnels and chambers where Krell ships stopped for fuel and repairs. They landed the ship in a crater on the far side of the moon, hidden from the outpost's sensors. Then they began the long walk across the lunar surface. The outpost had equipment that let them survive outside, suits that provided air and pressure. It felt strange to Jake wearing alien technology, but it worked. The outpost's entrance was a large airlock on the surface. Lyra's team approached it silently while Sketh's team moved toward the communications tower visible a kilometer away. Jake's team waited in the shadows of a crater, ready to move when the chaos started. Right on schedule, explosions lit up the night at the communications tower. Sketh's team was using captured Krell weapons to maximum effect. Alarms began blaring inside the outpost. Through their communication devices, Jake heard Prism's voice. Security forces are moving toward the tower. The main entrance is clear. Lyra, you may proceed. Lyra's team slipped through the airlock like ghosts. Jake gave them 30 seconds, then led his own team forward. They entered through a maintenance access Prism had unlocked. The corridors inside were similar to the prison ship, clean, smooth, glowing with soft light. They moved quickly toward the command center. A few guards appeared, but they were focused on the communications tower attack. Jake's team took them down quietly, efficiently. The guards never had a chance to raise an alarm. The command center doors were sealed. Prism's voice came through again. Security locks are complex. I need physical access to override them. How long? Jake asked. 60 seconds. Jake positioned his team in a defensive formation around the door. Those 60 seconds felt like an hour. He could hear footsteps approaching. Voices shouting in the Krell language. They had been discovered. The first group of guards rounded the corner and stopped in shock. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Jake gave the order to fire. The corridor exploded with energy blasts and the sounds of combat. His team held the line, using cover and tactics to overcome the guards' superior numbers. The door behind them suddenly opened. Access granted, Prism announced. Fall back inside, Jake ordered. His team retreated into the command center. Jake was the last one through, firing as he backed up. The door sealed behind them. Inside were 4 Krell officers, all staring at the intruders with their huge black eyes. Nobody moves, nobody gets hurt, Jake said, raising his M4. The translation system made sure they understood every word. The lead officer was a female Krell with elaborate markings on her gray skin. She stood slowly, her hands visible. You are making a grave mistake, human. The Krell Collective spans 1,000 worlds. You cannot hide from us. I'm not hiding, Jake said. And I'm not running. We need fuel, supplies, and information. You're going to give us all three. Then you're going to send a message for me. What message? Jake walked closer to her, his weapon steady. You're going to tell your collective about me. About what happened on your prison ship. About how I escaped. And you're going to tell them that Earth is off limits. Because if you come to my world again, you won't be taking specimens. You'll be starting a war you can't win. The officer studied him with those alien eyes. You think very highly of your species. But you are primitives. You have no ships that can travel the stars. No weapons that can threaten us. You are insects believing themselves to be giants. Maybe, Jake admitted. But I'm an insect that turned your prison ship into a war zone. I'm an insect that stole your ships. And I'm an insect that's standing in your command center with a gun pointed at you. Still think we're harmless? For the first time, Jake saw something like fear cross the alien's face. She glanced at her officers, then back at him. What is it about your species? The archive warned us. It said that warriors with death names were dangerous. But why? You are not strong. You are not fast. What makes you so feared? Jake thought about the question. Because we never give up. You can hurt us. You can cage us. You can try to break us. But we'll keep fighting. We'll adapt. We'll learn. We'll do whatever it takes to survive and protect our own. That's what makes humans dangerous. That's what being a Reaper means. The officer was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Very well. Take what you need. I will send your message, but know this, human. Your warning will not be enough. There are others in the collective who will see your world as a challenge. They will come, not to collect specimens, but to prove the archive wrong. You have painted a target on your entire species. Then they'll learn the same lesson you did, Jake said. Prism interfaced with the command center computers and began downloading everything. Star charts showing the location of Earth and the Krell territories, technical specifications for their ships, information about their military strength. Everything humanity would need to prepare for what was coming. Lyra's team secured the fuel depot and began refueling their ship. Sketh's team fell back from the communications tower. Their job done. Within an hour, they had everything they needed. As Jake's team prepared to leave, the Krell officer spoke again. What is your name, human? So I can include it in my report. Lieutenant Jake Morrison, United States Navy SEAL, call sign Reaper. And you can tell your collective that name is going to mean something very different from now on. It's not just a warning anymore. It's a promise. The team made it back to their ship without further incident. As they lifted off from the moon, Jake looked back at the outpost. He had given them a warning. Would the Krell listen? Would they leave Earth alone? Or would they come looking for revenge? It didn't matter. Jake was going home, and he was bringing proof that humanity wasn't alone in the universe. He was bringing technology, knowledge, a warning. His people needed to know what was out there. They needed to prepare. The ship accelerated toward Earth, jumping to faster-than-light speeds. Jake sat in the captain's chair and closed his eyes. Soon he would be home. Soon he would see his teammates again. Soon he would warn his world about the dangers lurking in the stars. But he also knew that his life would never be the same. He wasn't just a SEAL anymore. He was something else, something new. He was the man who had been captured by aliens and lived to tell about it. He was the man who would help prepare humanity for its place in the galaxy. He was Reaper. The journey home took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of traveling through space at speeds Jake couldn't comprehend. 3 weeks of learning about the galaxy from Prism and the other freed prisoners. 3 weeks of preparing for what came next. Jake spent the time wisely. He studied the Krell technology. He practiced with their weapons. He learned their language, going beyond the translation system to actually understand how they communicated. Most importantly, he studied the data Prism had stolen from the outpost. The information was terrifying. The Krell Collective controlled over 1,000 worlds. Their military had thousands of ships. Their technology was centuries ahead of Earth's. If they decided to attack, humanity wouldn't stand a chance. But the data also showed weaknesses. The Krell were scientists and collectors, not soldiers. They had conquered primitive worlds through technology, not tactics. They weren't used to fighting enemies who fought back with intelligence and determination. That gave humanity a chance, a small one, but a chance nonetheless. You are worried, Lyra said one day, finding Jake alone in what passed for the ship's observation area. Wouldn't you be? Jake replied, staring at Earth through the viewport. It was still days away, but he could see it now. That blue and white marble that held everything he cared about. You defeated the Krell twice, Lyra pointed out. You escaped their prison ship. You captured their outpost. Why do you doubt your people can do the same? Because I had surprise on my side. The Krell didn't know what to expect from a human. Now they do, and when they come back they'll be ready. Lyra sat beside him, her tail curling around her legs. Then you must make sure your people are ready too. That is why you are returning, yes? To warn them. To prepare them. Jake nodded. Yeah, but I'm not sure they'll believe me. I mean, I barely believe what happened and I lived through it. You have proof, Lyra said. You have this ship. You have us. You have the data. And you have your story. That will be enough. Jake hoped she was right. 2 days later, the ship entered Earth's solar system. Jake's heart raced as they passed Mars, then approached Earth. The planet grew larger on the view screen, filling him with emotions he couldn't name. Relief, joy, fear, determination. Prism, we need to make contact before we get too close, Jake said. Earth's defenses might see us as a threat. I am ready, Prism replied. What frequency should I use? Jake gave Prism the military frequencies he remembered. Then he took a deep breath and began speaking. This is Lieutenant Jake Morrison, Naval Special Warfare Development Group, call sign Reaper. Authentication code Sierra Victor 39 Charlie. I am aboard an alien spacecraft in high orbit. I need immediate contact with command. For a long minute, there was only static. Jake's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. What if they didn't believe him? What if they thought this was some kind of trick? Then a voice crackled through the speakers. Reaper, this is command. Authenticate identity. What was your team's secondary objective on Operation Mongoose? Jake smiled. They were testing him. Secure the server room in the basement. We recovered 12 intact hard drives out of 15. Another pause. Longer this time. Then a different voice came through. Older. Authoritative. Jake, this is Admiral Hayes. We thought you were dead. Your helicopter was found in the Pacific 3 weeks ago. What the hell is going on up there? Jake spent the next hour explaining everything. His capture. The Krell, the prison ship. The escape. The outpost. The threat facing Earth. He transmitted all the data Prism had collected. Every piece of evidence. Every bit of proof. Admiral Hayes listened without interrupting. When Jake finished, there was a long silence. Jake could almost hear the Admiral thinking, processing, trying to accept the impossible truth. Lieutenant, if this is real, if what you're telling me is true, then everything changes. We need to verify this. Can you bring your ship down? Yes, sir. Where? Area 51. We'll have teams waiting. And Jake, if this turns out to be some kind of elaborate hoax, you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. Understood, sir. It's not a hoax. I'm coming home. Prism guided the ship down through Earth's atmosphere. Jake watched through the viewport as the sky changed from black to blue. Clouds passed beneath them. Then land appeared. The familiar brown and green of the Nevada desert. They landed on the dry lake bed at Area 51, the exact same place where Jake had once trained for desert operations. But this time he was arriving in an alien spacecraft. Military vehicles surrounded them immediately. Soldiers in full combat gear took positions. Snipers watched from nearby buildings. Jake stood at the ship's airlock, hands raised, Prism floating beside him. The door opened and he stepped out onto Earth soil for the first time in a month. The sun felt warm on his face. The air smelled like dust and sage. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever experienced. A figure pushed through the security perimeter. Danny Collins, Jake's teammate. The man who had watched him get pulled into the sky. Danny stopped, stared, then ran forward and grabbed Jake in a hug that nearly knocked him over. You crazy son of a gun, Danny said, his voice thick with emotion. We held a memorial for you. We thought you were dead. Sorry I missed it, Jake replied, grinning. I was a bit busy. Over the following days, Jake was questioned by every agency that could claim interest. FBI, CIA, NSA, military intelligence. Air Force, he told his story over and over. He showed them the ship. He introduced them to Prism and the other aliens. He demonstrated the weapons and technology. Slowly, they began to believe. How could they not? The evidence was right in front of them. An alien spacecraft sitting on American soil. Living, breathing aliens who could communicate and prove they came from other worlds. Technology that defied human science. But Jake's most important meeting was in a secure bunker beneath the Pentagon. The president was there. The Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Secretary of Defense, the heads of every intelligence agency. They all sat around a table looking at Jake like he held the key to humanity's future, which in a way he did. "Tell us the truth, Lieutenant," the president said. "Are we in danger?" Jake didn't hesitate. "Yes, sir. The Krell will come back. They have to. We made them look weak. They'll want to prove they're still the dominant power, and they won't come with specimen collection ships next time. They'll come with warships. When? I don't know. Could be months. Could be years. But they'll come, and we need to be ready." The Secretary of Defense leaned forward. "What do you recommend?" Jake pulled up the holographic star map that Prism had taught him to use. It showed Earth, the Krell territory, and the vast empty space between. "We need ships. Real spacecraft that can fight and defend Earth from orbit. We need to reverse engineer the Krell technology I brought back. And we need allies. The Krell have enemies. We should find them and make friends." "You're talking about militarizing space," the president said. "Building weapons. Forming alliances with alien species we've never met. That's going to be expensive, difficult, and it will terrify people." "Yes, sir," Jake agreed. "But the alternative is worse. The alternative is waiting for the Krell to return with overwhelming force, fighting them unprepared, losing. I've seen their technology. I've seen what they can do. If we don't start preparing now, Earth won't survive." The room was quiet. Jake could see the weight of the decision on everyone's faces. This wasn't just about politics or military strategy. This was about the survival of the human race. Finally, the president nodded. "All right. As of today, we're creating a new branch of the military, the United States Space Defense Force. And Lieutenant Morrison, you're going to help us build it. You've seen the enemy. You've fought them. You know what we're up against." "We need that knowledge." Jake stood and saluted. "Yes, sir. Whatever you need." 6 months later, Jake stood in an orbital facility that hadn't existed when he left Earth. Around him, workers from dozens of countries assembled humanity's first real warship. It was ugly, brutal, utilitarian, but it was powerful. Reverse-engineered Krell engines, human-designed weapons, armor that could withstand energy blasts. Prism floated beside him, having chosen to stay and help prepare Earth for what was coming. "You have accomplished much in a short time," Prism observed. "Not enough," Jake said. "We need more ships, better weapons, more training. The Krell won't wait forever. No, they will not. But when they come, they will find Earth is not the helpless world they expected. They will find warriors ready to defend their home. They will find Reapers." Jake smiled at that. The name had taken on new meaning. When the aliens had first heard it, they had seen it as a warning, a sign of danger. Now it was something more. It was a promise, a symbol of humanity's refusal to be victims. Below them, Earth rotated peacefully. Most people still didn't know the full truth. They knew aliens existed now. The government had released some information, carefully controlled. But they didn't know about the threat. They didn't know about the coming war, but they would. When the Krell returned, everyone would know. And Jake would be ready. Humanity would be ready. They had been given a warning and time to prepare. They wouldn't waste it. Danny joined him at the viewport, looking down at Earth. "Think we can win?" he asked. Jake thought about everything he had learned. About the Krell's weaknesses. About humanity's strengths. About what happened when you pushed humans into a corner and threatened everything.